Welcome back to the Daily Edition. Well, according to a report in the Journal of Sex and Marital Therapy, 54% of married Aussie men and 42% of married Aussie women reported that they were unhappy with the amount of sex that they were having. The men overwhelmingly wanted more, and 1/3 of women said that they were getting more than they needed. So what's considered normal, and what do you do if you find yourself in a sexless marriage? Well, for this week's Spotlight, we're joined by sexologist Elaine George and Dr. Brad Mackay. Good to talk to you both. Thanks for coming in. Elaine, it seems to me that this is all about managing expectations. If you can manage expectations, you've got a good thing going on.
Exactly, Monique. Look, we've been talking about it. It's, a lot of people want to know, am I having as much sex as that person next door? There's an average of 2.5 times a week, and I've always wondered, where does that 0.5 come from? But the reality is that everyone's different. And
very little people?
Yeah, very little people. But people are facing different phases of their relationship. There's a lot of factors that will come in and affect, what's called a sexless marriage. And can I define it?
Yeah.
It's basically sex less than 10 times a year. So whenever I do a talk, you see people go, phew, because, they're just in 11 times a year. Now, some people that may have sex twice a year, 3 times a year, once on their anniversary, once at Christmas, once on your birthday, it's fine if both people are okay with that. Usually what happens, though, is that one person wants sex more often than the other, and this is where desire discrepancy happens, and then you've got problems that arise.
I find that a really interesting statistic to say that it's sexless if it's less than 10 times a year, when perhaps there are people that are in there, as you say, that are perfectly happy and they believe they are in a sex-filled marriage because they're getting what they want. Brad, there are lots and lots of reasons why people stop having sex. How much of it is psychological and how much of it is physical, just being tired?
Yeah, well, there's multiple reasons why, and every relationship's very different. So you can certainly have somebody, especially once you've had a baby, that's one of the big things that changes a woman physically, and then it's really difficult to sort of get back in the saddle, so to speak.
It's a great contraception, having a baby.
A baby is a very good contraception, but it didn't work in the first place when you're having a baby. So certainly physical issues can cause a problem. There's lots of people that have depression or anxiety, or else they've got back problems or other health problems that really take over for a time. So I suppose the issue is that if those medical issues are over, once pregnancy's over, then how do you go about getting back into having a fulfilling sexual life?
So how do you? Well, how do you get on the same page?
Well, yeah, that's a very good question, because as Brad and I were discussing before, you've got the medical factors, the hormones and everything for men and women, but then often you've got the psychological factors, which is stress, fatigue, depression. Look at how rampant that's becoming, or pandemic that's becoming in Western society. And then you've got your socio-cultural factors, and these are things that we don't necessarily pay attention to. What's the couple's educational background? What's their religious affiliation, if any? What's their spiritual affiliation? It's culture is something that's cultivated in us from when we're 2, like your children, until where we are now as an adult. And so to come back and manage it, first of all, you've almost got to take stock of, okay, so these are your sets of needs that you're bringing into the marriage, these are my set of needs. And then you've got to communicate. And this is something that we forget to do. But unless you communicate effectively, and unless the couple is taught how to do it in such a way that it's not blame, or it's not feeling resented, or adding to the anger and the conflict that may be already there, couples need to learn how to communicate what their needs are so that they can move past it.
And get on the same page.
Yeah.
Would you ever advise people to go along to their GP and see if there is any physical reason why they don't feel like it?
Totally. I recommend everyone who is having issues with sex to really go along and talk to the GP about it, because we need to exclude a whole range of medical conditions that could be causing a problem. And then if that's excluded, then we can look more at the psychological causes and then be able to provide counselling and sort of, destigmatise the whole situation that's going on. There's a lot of guilt that's involved with this too. You're either guilty that you're not having sex enough, or you're guilty that you're having sex too much, and your partner's needs need to come into that play as well.
Oh, it's a good one to talk about. We're out of time, but thank you both for coming in.
All right, thanks.
Welcome.
Thanks, Monique.
Thanks, Elaine. Thanks, Brad.